All right, today we're going to dive into a concept that is, no joke, the engine behind all modern computing. And that concept is concurrency.
Okay, but before we get into the weeds, just do me a quick favor. Look out your window. Seriously, go ahead. What do you see? Are things happening one after another, in a neat, perfect line? No way, right? You've got cars moving, people walking, birds flying. It's all happening at the same time. The real world isn't sequential, it's concurrent. And for our computers to actually model and interact with our world, well, they had to become concurrent too.
And that brings us to our first big idea here, a world in parallel. The real question is, how do you take all that chaos, all that stuff happening at once in the real world, and translate it into the digital world humming away inside our machines?
So what is concurrency, really? Well, at its heart, it's pretty simple. It's the ability of a system, and that could be anything from a single app on your phone to a massive network of servers, to deal with more than one task at the same time. It's really all about managing a bunch of different things at once, just like what's happening outside your window right now.
But why did this suddenly become so incredibly important? I mean, what was the big deal? Well, that question leads us to this really famous, almost legendary turning point in computer science history. A moment when engineers everywhere had to face a hard truth. The free lunch was officially over.
See, for decades, life was, well, it was easy. Back in 1965, Gordon Moore, the co-founder of Intel, he spotted a pattern. The number of transistors you could cram onto a chip was doubling roughly every 2 years. This became the famous Moore's Law. And for software engineers, oh man, this was the golden age. You didn't have to do a thing. You could write mediocre code, and 2 years later, it would just run twice as fast on the new hardware. It was literally a free performance lunch, served up on a silver platter year after year.
But then, around 2002, the music stopped. The party was over. A C++ expert named Herb Sutter wrote this now famous article, and he declared flat out, the free lunch was over. And he wasn't just being dramatic. He was signaling this massive, seismic shift. The era of just sitting back and getting free speed boosts, that had come to a sudden, screeching halt.
So what happened? Why did the lunch end? Well, we slammed headfirst into a hard wall, the wall of physics. There were two big culprits here. First, the speed of light. I know, it sounds crazy, but signals can only travel so fast, and on a tiny chip, that started to become a real bottleneck. But the second problem was even more dramatic: heat. When you cram that many transistors that close together, they get hot. So hot that chips were literally at risk of melting themselves. The single processor engine had basically redlined. It couldn't go any faster.
Okay, so the old way was broken. The industry desperately needed a new path forward, and that meant completely changing how we even thought about performance. Which brings us to this absolutely crucial distinction: latency versus throughput.
First, let's talk about latency. This is the one we're all used to, right? It's just, how long does one single task take to finish? So think of it like this. You've got a motorcycle, and you want to get from home to work. Your only goal is to reduce the time it takes to make that one trip. Go faster. That's low latency.
But then you've got throughput, and this is a totally different game. It's not about how fast one task is. It's about how many total tasks a system can handle in a given amount of time. So, instead of that fast motorcycle, now I want you to picture a city bus. The bus itself is way slower than the motorcycle, for sure, but its goal is totally different. It's trying to get the absolute maximum number of people from home to work over the course of, say, an hour. And this right here is the absolute core of the new challenge. The entire industry had to shift its focus away from latency, making that one motorcycle faster and faster, and pivot to throughput, getting more total work done with a whole fleet of buses. It's a fundamental trade-off, right? You can't just obsess over one, you have to balance the raw speed of a single task with the total capacity of the whole system.
Let's actually put a number on this to make it super clear. Imagine that motorcycle gets one person to work in, let's say, 30 minutes. Now, a bus might take a full hour, twice as long. But that bus is carrying 50 people. So in that hour, the motorcycle has delivered 2 people. The bus has delivered 50. That means the bus system has a throughput that is 25 times greater than the motorcycle. That's not a small difference. That is a massive increase in the total work getting done.
So this is where concurrency becomes our hero. It's the master tool for this whole new way of thinking. For one, it can actually reduce latency on a big task by breaking it up into smaller pieces that all run at the same time, in parallel. It can also hide latency, and this is super cool. It lets the system do other useful work while it's waiting for some slow task to finish. You're not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs. And of course, the big one, it dramatically increases throughput by letting the system process tons of different tasks all at once.
This massive shift in thinking, from pure raw speed to overall capacity, it led to a completely fundamental change in how we build powerful computer systems. And that brings us to this next big idea, scaling up versus scaling out.
So let's say you need more computing power. What are your options? Well, the old way was called scaling up or vertical scaling. You just buy a bigger, faster, more powerful machine, a monster supercomputer. The problem? This gets ridiculously expensive fast, and you still hit a performance ceiling pretty quickly. The new way is called scaling out, or horizontal scaling. Instead of one giant, expensive machine, you take a whole bunch of smaller, cheaper, commodity machines and have them work together in a cluster. And the best part, if you need more power, you just add another machine. It's way more cost-effective.
And really, there wasn't much of a contest. The winner was crystal clear. The entire tech industry, we're talking everyone from Google with its massive search engine to Netflix streaming movies to billions, they all chose to scale out. But here's the catch. That approach is literally impossible without concurrency. You absolutely have to have a way to manage and coordinate all the work happening across all those different machines.
And this all leads us to our final, and maybe most important takeaway. See, concurrency isn't just some clever performance trick. It's a deep, fundamental strategy for managing complexity itself. It's really all about a timeless principle: divide and conquer.
At the very heart of this strategy is this powerful idea called decoupling. It sounds fancy, but it's a simple and honestly a beautiful idea. You separate what needs to get done from when it gets done. And concurrency is the tool, it's the mechanism that lets us do this. It allows us to break up a giant monolithic system into a bunch of smaller, simpler, independent units that can just focus on their one little job and communicate with each other when they need to.
This is that classic divide and conquer principle playing out right in front of us. You take a massive, super intimidating problem. Step 1, break it into small, manageable pieces. Step 2, solve each of those small pieces on its own, independently. And step 3, you coordinate the results to solve that original big problem. Concurrency is what makes this whole workflow possible. And the result? You get software that's way easier to build, much easier to understand, and a heck of a lot easier to maintain.
So in the end, concurrency wasn't just a quick technical fix for slow computers. It was a complete paradigm shift. It's what moved us from thinking in a straight, linear line to thinking in parallel, and in doing so, it unlocked the incredible power that runs basically everything in our modern world. It forces us to stop asking, how can I do this one thing faster, and start asking, how can I get more total work done? So the question I want to leave you with is this. Concurrency changed computing forever. How might thinking in parallel change the way you solve problems?